Karen, welcome to Halloween Daily. Thanks so much for hanging out with us today.
Thanks for having me. Thanks. How are you?
I'm doing great. It was awesome when Sue and I were able to meet you for just a few minutes and talk for a couple minutes back in September when you were in Virginia for Haunted Screams Expo. And
Mhm.
more recently, like a lot of our audience, I'm sure I just rewatched Thanksgiving again just the other week around the holiday itself. And so I'm super excited to dig in to all of that and to really get some of your perspective on what I'm sure is going to be annual viewing for people like myself for many years to come.
Mhm.
So this is exciting for us, totally. Um,
Great. I love that it's becoming this Thanksgiving tradition to watch this crazy movie. I love it.
Absolutely. Well, it is. And I was thinking about, it was just the 1 year anniversary and news about the sequel is already in the news. And, but it is going to be one of those films that people revisit, like Halloween and Black Christmas and many of those other holiday based horror movies that we love so much. So it's absolutely going to be there. And of course, you're seeing, one for the record books. But before we get into all that, let's go back a little bit. We always try to get a little bit of your origin story when we can, and being Halloween Daily News, we always try to look at our flashbacks through the Halloween lens. So I guess to begin, well, do you celebrate Halloween? And if so, what is your earliest memory of celebrating Halloween?
So earliest memory I would say is, gosh, I think all of I'm an army brat, so my dad was in the military, so it's funny when I was in Virginia and I met you, I had gone back to the house that we were stationed at for 3 years, which was crazy, just in Virginia Beach. So that was like a total
Yes.
crazy trip down memory lane. So I think my earliest memories is like up in Manitoba, Canada, on this tiny, tiny freezing cold army base. I remember like going with like a pillowcase to the different little trailer homes that were around. I remember that distinctly. But yeah, I like Halloween. I do. But it's so funny. Like I find that myself as an actor who's been doing it for like 30 years now, I don't get the same like crazy joy out of dressing up. Like I would put on some cat ears and trick or treat
Mm-hmm.
and maybe go to a party and dress up, but I was not crazy about it. I was like, why? I'm like, I'm not a Grinch. What's going on? Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
usually a really fun person. I think it's because I do that for a living. So
Mm-hmm.
the novelty isn't there for me.
Yeah.
Just like I actually love like true crime podcasts and I love like documentaries more than I do fiction.
Mm-hmm.
So I do love Halloween, but I'm not like a super crazy like Halloween fan. But I love it. I
Well,
like candy.
well, and we've heard that before. You're not alone in that because, like you said, you are you're Halloween every day, which is right up our alley anyway. And making, especially in genre films too, where there is costumes and blood and all of that. Yeah, I think we can understand that you might want to take it a little bit easier in that department
I want
sometimes.
to be a normal person.
Now you mentioned candy though. We always ask that. What is your favorite Halloween candy or treat, and also your favorite Halloween costume that you've ever worn?
And by candy I mean chocolate. So I'm not I
Okay.
don't like candy like sugar candy.
Right. Right.
I never. Although I do like the occasional Skittle or a
Hmm.
Starburst in terms of candy, but I'm a huge like Kit Kat fan. Kit Kat, Cadbury mini
Definitely.
eggs. Like
Yeah.
I love anything Cadbury actually. So Cadbury, if you're listening, send. Um
There you go.
I love Nestle. Yeah, Nestle I love. That's like my favorite. So those boxes that come with all those little mini
Oh
chocolates,
yeah. Yeah.
they're gone. They're gone. So I buy them in advance before Halloween, and then it's always a huge mistake because it's all gone. Between me and my daughter, it's not a good situation.
I can understand that. Yeah. I love all of those too, especially the Kit Kats and the
Yeah.
Reese's. Um, how about a costume? Do you have a favorite costume?
What did I wear? Well, I think at the last Halloween party I went to was a couple years ago,
Hmm.
and I dressed up as one of the pink ladies from Grease too.
Oh, nice.
So that was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't ever dress up as like a gory person, right? So
Hmm.
I'll do like a fun, cute costume. So that one was fun. That was the last one I can remember, to be honest.
And I don't know if you've seen any yet, but I don't think it'll be too long before you start seeing John Carver costumes. I know you see the Jigsaw, the Billy puppets out there all the time, like we all do. That's a staple already, but I don't think it's going to be long before John Carver starts working his way in there more and more as again as years go on and more people discover this movie and that already iconic killer mask.
Yeah, it's weird. I was at Party City a month ago. I was
Hmm.
hosting like a taco fiesta party at my house, and I was getting all these decorations, and I was like, "Oh, Halloween stuff was like, um, was on," and I was like, for sure there's gonna be a John Carver mask, and there wasn't. So I'm thinking maybe next year.
It's coming. Oh yeah, yeah. It's definitely coming. They should have had it out for this year for sure, because then everybody could have kept it on through November and through Thanksgiving itself. Like that's what I want to do. I want to freak out my family and wear the John Carver mask actually to Thanksgiving dinner one year. But like you said, next year we'll have to next year for the sequel.
Exactly, exactly.
Um, now when like you said, you've been in this business for a while. At when did you know that this was what you wanted to do? That you wanted to be an actor and act in films?
Oh God, it was the only thing I ever wanted to do
Hmm.
since I was really, really little. Yeah, I was always like in my room, daydreaming, practicing in front of the mirror. And when like my friends would just want to play Barbies, like, let's go to the store. Do you want to? I was like, boring. Let's get some drama. And I'd be like, it'd be a horrific situation, sometimes like way too like adult material.
Hmm.
But I just really just always like wanted like intensity and depth. And like I would cry with my Barbies. So I really say that I honed my acting skills playing Barbies
Hmm.
or My Little Ponies or whatever, any little figurines that I could. I even had a little car set and I would just use my imagination. I'd be in the basement for hours, hours and hours and hours. And sometimes I'd want my sister to play with me and she would be like, she's more like intellectual. And so she was like, I don't get this play. Like, what is this? Like, no. So she would just like last 5 minutes, but I could just go for hours. So I loved doing that. And then as I got older in high school, I was in drama class, top of my drama class, and I was great. And, I was living in Montreal at the time in Canada, and
Hmm.
I was, okay, that's just how do I get from here to there
Right.
to have this as a career? But I was also very interested in psychology. And so I said, well, let me just go into psychology. I really want to do therapy and activism work. And then, yeah, before I knew it, I was modeling. Didn't really want to do that, but I was like, sure, if I can travel and have some fun. My modeling agency opened up an acting division, and then I started auditioning, and I booked my first few things right away. So I was kind of lucky in that, but I'd been
Hmm.
kind of doing it all my life unprofessionally. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into this business back in, my God, I must have been 20 years old. Yeah. So just
Awesome.
yesterday, really.
Yeah, yeah, just yesterday, right? And
Uh,
and is there a project? I mean, it was probably Saw 6, I guess, but was that I guess the biggest probably production that you were part of up to that point? And stepping into it was already so established by part 6. It was just so big and again, talk about annual events for horror fans. That was during the time where they were coming out every Halloween. We remember very fondly going to see them every Halloween in theater. But what was that a point that you were like really like okay, now we're in the big leagues, or was there a production of that size before then?
yeah, it's weird. I mean, that was, I think, like 15 years ago, if I'm doing my math
Wow, I
correct.
think so. Yeah,
Yeah, I had just
it's
gotten pregnant with
crazy.
a daughter. So I was on that carousel, newly pregnant. That was fun. Um, and I mean, she came out colicky. She was colicky for the first few months. So I'm always like, oh, it's because I was screaming my head off. And he heard that in the womb and was like, oh, this is how we are human.
Yeah.
No. So yeah, that was pretty big in terms of like a franchise. That was definitely like the biggest one. But I had been doing mostly like TV series up until then. So I had done like kind of 7 TV series back to back. And when I got on a show called Mutant X, I came on season 3. So that was already an established show. So I would say
Hmm.
that was my first experience hopping onto something that was already had been established, had a big fan base. So that was really nerve-wracking. But in terms of Saw, yeah, like because I hadn't done many feature films at that point, a handful, some TV
Hmm.
movies, a big Francis Ford Coppola one when I was young, but not a very good one. But um, Yeah, so that was really fun to do, just to be part of that whole franchise because I did like the Saw movies. So I was like, oh, this is good. This is good. Yeah.
Well, and I was going to ask that too, going into Saw again. Like you said, it was a big franchise already, so established and so successful at that time. If you were a fan, obviously you were aware of the movies, but if you were a fan of them, and you say you were, so that was a big deal for you. Um, when you're in there and you're filming, like you said, this carousel scene, the franchise is famous for these traps and these crazy death scenes, and then these morality themes also that go on in there. And it's crazy, but your character actually survives. It's I mean you're one that and if I'm not mistaken, she's according to the films, the canon, she's still out there somewhere. So maybe they'll revisit her at some point. But
Go
talk to us.
Shelby.
Yeah. Bring hey, they brought other characters back that we thought were done with, and but yeah, she's as far as we know anyway, he's still out there.
Yeah.
So that carousel scene, I mean, it was so intense and so crazy. Talk to us about filming that, about what it was like on the set shooting that, and you already talked a little bit about some behind the scenes that you were pregnant, so that's crazy. Somebody else was there on set as well that day.
Yeah, the both of us were
That's awesome.
that. Yeah, so I had just gotten pregnant, so it's in those first few months where you're a little bit nauseous. So the slow
Man.
spinning for an entire day was
Yeah.
really fun. So no, that was hilarious. Like I say hilarious because I would laugh at this stuff. Like I'm able to like tap in and out, like turn it on and off
Mm-hmm.
pretty well. So we'd say cut, and then we would just be like talking, all of us be like, hey, so anyway, blah, 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 blah. And then one time we were just like all like having lunch all together, and then like all of us had like different pieces of blood and guts in our hair and skin hanging off, a head blown off, and we're just like chatting around. I was like, look at what we do for a living. Like, what on earth? This is hilarious. So I just wish someone had taken a picture of us just casually eating
Yeah.
with, brains blown out. So that was really fun, but that was really great. That took a full day from what I
Mm-hmm.
remember, full day to shoot, if not two. That was great. And actually, the costume designer on that show that
Mm-hmm.
was the same as our costume designer on Thanksgiving.
Oh, nice. I didn't realize that.
So they're two sisters who work in the costume department. So it was like either Leslie or Alex. So yeah, so they're
Cool.
really good at the horror stuff. But yeah, that scene was really fun. Everyone was really great. I made one of my best friends to this day on that, Larissa, and she also survived. So the two survivors
Oh,
became
there
really
we
good
go.
friends. Yeah. So it was a good time.
That's cool. Like you said, you and your friend, I mean, yeah, there were two survivors from that scene, and yeah, I don't think any of the films have really referenced them or gone back to them, but they're still making them. They're making another one, so there's still plenty of time for that.
Start
That's
writing
what these
those letters.
franchises, yeah, that's what these franchises do all the time. Bringing back more and more of the legacy characters and everything. So that's notable too, because not a lot of people can say that they faced one of Jigsaw's traps and live to tell the story about it, and
I guess I
possibly being a
pleaded
sequel.
that case. Like I don't remember what I was saying, but I was just like I was calling out everyone else for being a liar. So that worked. So
Yeah,
hot tip, everybody, just deflect all of the responsibility from you, call everyone else a liar, and you will survive.
that's it. That's it.
Wise words from me.
And I've heard we've talked to a lot of legendary cinema killers as well as some final girls and famous kills and everything in between. And we hear that a lot though, that in between all the gore and the super intense, pleading for your lives and everything, or running for your lives, fighting for your lives, it's cut and then it's laughs and everybody's just kind of lighthearted. And you talked about how you can kind of go in and out of it, and I would think that would come in handy in a film like Saw 6, and then later down the road in Thanksgiving, obviously with the oven scene especially. I mean, I would think that's very handy tool to be able to to turn that off when
It
they
was
say cut.
handy, but I have to say with Thanksgiving, there was a little bit, that one was a bit different because it was so exhausting
Yeah.
to be just like that intense, screaming for that long and tied up. I was on a metal grate for the whole day, like in this tiny thing, sometimes with all angles closed. So I was starting to get like a pounding headache. As soon as they said cut, like my head was just like throbbing and I could not move for like the first minute. And then I had to slowly get up because my head from just like bashing on the grate and I was like black and blue from bashing around everywhere. But I remember my head would just throb and I couldn't talk for like a minute and I had to just slowly get out and then I would just go and sit in a corner. So that one actually took more recovery time than Saw from what I remember because that was hugely intense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I imagine that one took even longer to film too, and a lot more parts to it and everything. Um, to back up just a little bit though, when down the road after being a part of Saw 6 and Thanksgiving comes, can you walk us through getting cast as Kathleen? And then also, I'm always curious, like, was it at all in your mind at the time that this is Eli Roth doing a Thanksgiving slasher? This is a good chance this is going to be one of those movies that is going to be revisited and become possibly a franchise, and kind of like the Saw and others before it, or is that just not even in your mindset at that time?
Well, it's funny when I first got it was like in January of last year. So I got the audition. It was a really busy time. It was one of a few that I was doing that week. I was like, oh, Thanksgiving, cute movie. Oh, I'm playing a bitch.
Mm-hmm.
No, no problem. I got this. And so I just did it. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember like seeing Eli Roth because I was a fan of Hostel.
Yeah,
But you really I don't get attached to my auditions. I do them,
yeah,
I love them because it's the only way to stay sane, really. So I didn't think much of it. I did the audition and like about a month later, I got cast. Like I didn't do a callback, I didn't have a Zoom meeting with Eli or anything. But it's when I got cast that I realized that I'm like, oh my God, so Thanksgiving was from like Grindhouse and Trail. So I watched that. I was like, oh my God, this is not a cute little Thanksgiving movie. Oh my God. I should have known, obviously, with Eli, but that's when I was like, oh,
mm-hmm.
interesting. And then when I got the script is when I realized like what happens to me and that was crazy. So yeah, it was a pretty easy casting process. I was really, really lucky. And I honestly thought, I think everyone else thought that it was just going to be one of the like a cult hit. We knew
Mm-hmm.
it was going to have its fan base. We knew it was going to
Sure.
be like small, but we did not know it was going to have the mainstream success that it did. To be honest, we were all kind of shocked.
Mm-hmm.
Eli too was like, "Wow, this is huge! Like, wow, it's number one here, it's number one there." So, yeah, we were all pleasantly surprised.
And we've talked about it already a little bit. This crazy kill scene with your character, got to be the most memorable part of the movie. I think. I mean, for me, it is anyway. I mean, it's got to be, and it's got some crazy kills in it, so that's saying something.
Mhm.
And obviously, knowing Eli's work, I mean, that's saying something. But um, was that the toughest part of the shoot for you, or if not, what was the most challenging part of that shoot?
Definitely that.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that we shot it last March and April of 2023.
Okay.
And we wrapped. Amazing, great job. Yay, it's gonna be great. Da, da, da. And then in the summer, I was doing ADR with Eli,
Mm-hmm.
Zooming from LA, and we're talking and whatever. And then a few weeks later, he texts me. So, like, end of summer, he texts me and he's like, are you ready for more? And I'm like, well, that could fucking mean anything with you. So, what, like, what's going on? And he's like, here's my idea. So just so you guys, I've told this story at some conventions and some podcasts before, but that whole chase scene, the whole pitchfork, the whole roasting in the oven was not in the original script. So we did not shoot that in the spring. So he texted me this whole thing. He's like, I want Kathleen to, like, once she gets captured, it's this whole thing. He described everything. He's like, and then you're roasted alive and you should see his text. And he's like, ah. And I was like, oh my God, relax. You're getting a little too excited about this. He's like, let me write it. Let me pitch it to Sony, see what they say. And I said, I'm
Mm-hmm.
available. Let me know when. And so he said, it took a couple weeks and he's like, we're on. And so we went back, just a very small crew. So me, Alex obviously was John Carver. And Shaylin, who's the cheerleader, did, that the fridge scene.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Gabe and Jenna with the corn,
That's right.
that was already filmed, but they had a couple little inserts to do.
Okay.
But it was 4 days of just those of that whole, just kind of filming that whole piece, and they put it together within a few weeks and released the movie. So that would never have been in the final movie had, he not thought of that and just wanting to do that. So I'm super grateful, because that made my part like super memorable even more. But I think it really made the movie, it really upped the ante. And he was like, I want this to be the best kill of my career. And I think he was really happy with it, and it's definitely lived up to his expectations. So, and you do want to talk about pressure. Like when he said that, I was like, okay, I got to do some serious justice, right? So I loved that challenge. It was really good. So yeah, that's a little tidbit there. That was not in the original movie.
Wow. Now, was there an alternate scene that was filmed originally that was the death, or what would
Never
it?
saw me die.
So it was just going to be, you would have been served up on the
surprise.
table, and the rest is in our imagination.
Exactly. The last time you would have seen me was at the parade getting darted and then served up. That's it. So he filmed we created all the in-between stuff, the basting, seasoning.
Yeah, well, and again, I just rewatched it, and yeah, I wanted, because Eli, he does some extreme close-ups and throughout the movie, and especially during your scene, and it's some of these scenes, like you said, being basted on this table, and I talked to Alex about it, and he's even doing these things like with his hand and just weird kind of motions. What are you thinking at that time as you're laying there and filming this? What's going through your mind?
I'm thinking, don't laugh, because he was tickling my feet. And then I was also going, oh my God, my feet are on a huge close-up on the big screen. This is not what I wanted. And then at one point when he gets to like my eye, he's like sprinkling salt. So Eli had the camera up here and he's like putting salt. And I remember feeling this massive chunk of like a pile of salt on my eye. And I was like, and then Eli's like, Karen, you're going to open your eyes in 5, 4. And I was like, it was already starting to burn. And I was like, dude, and I literally was just like, I can't, my eye's on fire. Cut. So we had to like reset for about 10 minutes because it was like just burning my eye. So those were definitely memorable. Yeah, it was pretty funny. And I remember just smelling like olive oil and vegetables for days after. Like, yuck.
Oh man. And then there's this whole chase sequence too, which again, I mean, it's one of the best just tense parts of the movie, because you do kind of think that maybe Kathleen's going to get away for a few seconds in there. She has these moments where, and then there's this fake out right at the end too, where John Carver, you think he's kind of walked away, and maybe she has gotten away. And yeah, the fact that it almost wasn't even the film. Can you talk to us about that shooting? And we've talked to Alex about being the stalker, but yeah, having to be stalked by John Carver.
Yeah. See, I really I did a lot of action series in when I was younger, and those are my favorite. Like I love doing action scenes. So I was really stoked about the chase. I wanted it to be more originally.
Yeah.
Originally there was a whole like chase in the forest, like me running barefoot through the forest and him chasing me there, but we had to cut it out just for timing and whatever. But also I was like, oh my God, like barefoot in the forest, like I'm gonna get hurt, like my feet are gonna get like destroyed. But I was excited about it. So I really was looking forward to that. And at one point, like, when I'm behind the wall with the bottle of wine and that whole fake out. So I remember like we had to rig this just like pitchfork, right, coming through. But because the camera was here, there couldn't be like a line. I didn't know, like I just had to trust. We were just kind of like, okay, the pitchfork's going to be here. And I was like, okay. So I literally was counting. If I move at this speed and I just go 1, 2, and then everything times out, that pitchfork's coming to me. Honestly, like 1 more inch and I would have gotten, I remember when it happened, that scream that I do is legit. It's real. I was terrified because I was so close to that in real life that I was like, it's too late. If that goes through my face, it's too late. Like the damage is done. So that was really real, actually. That was very, very real for me and scary.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then yeah, just like having that pitchfork scene and dropping down. I had a stunt double who was like running, and Alex had to, I think Alex said he had to like throw it with his left hand, which is and pass the camera, like really, really challenging stuff. But and then I did the final fall. But I loved that chase scene. I just really love it. I love, like I said, just doing action. I want to do more of that for sure.
Oh man, and like you said, I mean that's not CGI when the pitchfork comes through the wall there.
Mhm.
That's that's good to know. I mean that's an intense situation in real life, and also not CGI or not a stunt person when he's dragging you back in. I mean that's you getting dragged in there.
That's me who
Um,
broke all of my fingernails because I was like digging in like crazy, and all of them broke off. They're somewhere in some lawn somewhere. And I had dirt underneath my fingernails. I remember it took almost 2 weeks to get them out because I dug in so deep to the point where Alex at one point was like, Karen, could you just don't hold on so tight? Like I'm having a little bit of trouble. Because Eli was like, drag her faster. And he's like, she's holding on for dear life. Like, so he had to ask me, he's like, just tone it down. I'm like, am I too strong for you, big stunt guy? Oh, sorry. Okay. No problem. I'll make it easier for you. Oh God.
oh, I love it. I love it. So, and again, your experience working on other projects with a lot of action, obviously, was came in handy here. Again, another plus and a check there. Now, when you're in the oven, and again, it's fresh in my head because I just rewatched it, and I mean, as it starts to heat up, it's almost like you can feel the heat watching it. And you just the sound effects and your reactions. Um, what was that like? Obviously it wasn't heating up the way it appears there, but I mean that couldn't have been too comfortable to be in there. I mean, I guess it was like legit a giant oven.
Yeah, it was a real, real oven. And
Hmm.
again, comfort, there was no pads for me at all because we were filming it. So you would have seen them.
Hmm.
And I was really tied up. And yeah, so I must have looked like a weirdo for weeks after with all the bruises all over me. I couldn't sleep on the
Yeah.
back of my head for a couple weeks. That was so bruised up. I had like just rope marks around my
Hmm.
wrist. So that was good. So, but I remember I really, really wanted it to be like, when I was like lying there and the lights first come on, right? They're just lights. There was no heat, obviously.
Hmm.
But I just really wanted it to be like so real that what happens if that was real life and you woke up, you're a
Hmm.
little bit confused. Like, where am I? What are these lights? And then, so I remember like really wanting to like open my eyes, look around and just kind of be like, what the fuck? And then it's when I start to feel the heat in my head that I was going, no, 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 this can't be. And so I was really in the moment then
Hmm.
because it was so important to like have the audience feel that heat, feel
Yeah.
that buildup of the slow, like, oh my God, like everything I touch is like hot and like burning and just, it was crazy. It was really, really intense. And just pleading for your life like that, right? And him teasing me, I think he's gonna like open the door and save me. And then he's like, no, meat thermometer goes in. I die.
Yeah.
I loved it because you know what? It's like as an actor, you live for these moments where you get to just really push yourself and really act, because
Yeah.
sometimes you get, depending on the parts, you're like, okay, I can do this. It's not to say it's easy and not to
Hmm.
say you're taking it for granted at all, but there's sometimes you're like, okay, this is great. It was a fun experience, but is there a challenge? Like
Yeah.
you getting a bit lazy as an actor? Are you kind of phoning it in sometimes? And for this, there was no, and it just like sparked my love of acting again.
Hmm.
Really, really did. And so, yeah, that was really, really fun to get to just push myself like crazy.
Yeah, and there is that foreshadowing too in the film. There's that great line earlier when he says to you, Patrick Dempsey says, "I'm sure you'll make a great dinner." I think that's it. And And then I noticed on the rewatch, even earlier than that, in like the very first scene, he says something like, "Oh, for a single guy, I know my way around an oven." And I didn't even notice that until this most recent watch. But I was like, yeah, that's another little foreshadowing moment of
Either. I've never realized that. Okay, good to know.
yeah,
That's
like right in the beginning. I think it's the yeah when he first shows up at the house. He says something like that. And I was like, that's another cool foreshadowing. And now before the death scene, Kathleen, you got to work with Patrick Dempsey and some of these other cast members. What was that like? Maybe those days might have been some of the funner days on set, maybe, or a little less stressful anyway.
yeah. Well, I have to say, I don't get nervous that easily or that often. I don't get starstruck too much. But with Patrick Dempsey, I was a little nervous. I
Yeah,
have to say, because I did have a big crush on him on Grey's Anatomy. And my mom too.
yeah,
So I was like, oh my God. So when I first met him, I was like, okay, Karen, be cool, be cool, be cool, be cool. And yeah, and that scene where I'm like talking with him and holding an eggplant and just like I was like, what? Again, like what am I doing with my life? This is fantastic. But he was really great. He was funny, he was so personable, really great experience. And then most of my scenes were with Rick. So Rick and I hung out a bunch and he's great, funny, and yeah, the whole cast, I have to say, like, I didn't meet everybody, but it
hmm
was great. So nice, especially the kids, as we call them. They're
yeah.
so great. Just got to see them in Niagara Falls at a convention, and it
Oh,
was
cool.
just so nice to see them. They're such lovely people.
That's very cool. And yeah, to hear that you were fanning out a little bit too. I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think we love to hear that yeah, you've got your heroes as well, like we all do, and we would be as well. I'm sure. Um, Now, and then when your character is served up, I mean, obviously that's like a casting, a mold. What was that like, seeing your severed head and your whole body served as a turkey, basically, in this finale scene, which is like the big culmination of everything. And that's kind of the reveal here that it all builds to, and then it just gets even crazier from there. But what was that like, seeing yourself presented like that?
So I wasn't there on the day that they filmed that whole dinner scene,
Okay,
but the next day I worked. And then all the kids were all like, because they all taking pictures of this set, they were like, look, Karen. I was like, oh my God, that was the first time I saw like
that's
my
what you saw.
potatoes and my body. And yeah, so I had seen that before, but then definitely seeing it like on the big screen is just next level. I had a bit of a giggle. I went to go see it with my friends and they were dying of laughter. I was like, shut up. People are actually terrified because they were, they know me.
Right.
They were like laughing. I was like, stop it. You're laughing a little too much. I want to know why, but just shut up now. But yeah, I mean, it's so real because it was so well done. Like the prosthetic was amazing, right?
Yeah.
So good. So it was very real. People actually thought that it was my head. They did Tim Dillon's head as well, and Tommaso's head. Yeah, so they were so good. It was very, very, very real. So creepy.
And did you think that that would be the kill that I mean, Eli had said, well, you said that he had told you that he wanted it to be his the greatest kill of his career. So I guess you were aware that this would probably be the one, if there's going to be one that gets more conversation than the other. You It sounds like you were somewhat aware that it might be this one.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we were hoping.
Yeah.
And I think it did resonate. And I know that recently he's writing Thanksgiving 2 right now.
hmm
And I know that he wants to top it. So I don't know what he's going to do to top that, but stay tuned.
Yeah. Now, as just after the film wraps and then it comes out, and like you said, I mean, you guys knew that it would find its audience, but you didn't know it was going to be number one. You didn't know it was going to be so huge, and then not even just that. In the years since, there was the merchandising that happened immediately, and I don't know who had the foresight to get that going, or how that works so fast. But I mean, there's action figures out now of John Carver. There is masks. I don't know if they're available now, but they're coming. But there's lots of stuff. John Carver stuff is out there now. What has that ride been like in the last year or so? Just watching this film, you know, theatrical run, then it hits Netflix and gets even more popular. And you guys, like you said, you've mentioned making convention appearances. That's where we met you first. Meeting fans out there, seeing John Carver's walk around. I'm sure that he's going to be walking around with some Kathleens at some point if you haven't seen it already. I could see that happening.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Well, I've
what
seen it.
what has that been like?
Well, I mean, it's so fun, right? Because
Yeah,
it's so fun seeing fans react this way and their enthusiasm and their passion for it. I just get such a kick out of it. Like, like at conventions, I sell meat thermometers and turkey basters, and I just did it as a joke. Like, I was like, who's gonna like, is anyone like, but people have bought it, and like I autographed them, and I'm like, what a talking piece at Thanksgiving.
yeah, that's great.
But yeah, so I don't know. I get a kick out of people's passion for movies and characters and stuff like that. Because again, being in the business, I don't have that same passion for movies. Like
Yeah.
some actors do. There's a lot of actors that are huge movie fans. I'm just not, that's not what my passion is. I do
Hmm.
this as a job. I do this as a living. I kind of clock in, clock out. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But I
Hmm.
also teach acting on the side. So it's such a part of my life, like teaching acting and that whole thing. But the fandom is really what gives me a lot of joy, to be honest, and
Yeah.
seeing how people react to that. So I love being a part of that, like somehow affecting people's lives in a really good way. And then when you meet them and they're happy, and I've always loved that. I've always loved doing interviews and conventions and stuff with fans, especially when I was more in the sci-fi stuff
Yeah.
series I did. So that's been the biggest joy for me, for sure.
And you have been a part of so many genres, like you said. There's been the sci-fi stuff, and then the Saw franchise, and now with Thanksgiving becoming its own thing, and I'm sure just growing more and more. Um, is John Carver starting to rival the other autographs you're doing and stuff like that, as far as the fans you've met so far? Again, I mean, it feels like the movie's already been out longer than it has, but it's really only about a year old.
Oh, I would definitely say, I mean, I'm always surprised, like when, I mean, I always have about, I don't know, like maybe 10-15% of the fans that come to conventions are Saw fans.
Hmm.
And some as far back to like, I met a Vampire High fan, which was, oh my God, 25 years ago. I think it was my first TV
Wow.
series I did. So that's so fun, is like people knowing you from certain things that you just thought were like never seen by anybody. Or so I think that John Carver is definitely, especially when Thanksgiving 2 comes out, then
Oh
it's
yeah.
going to a real, that the power of the franchise machine behind it. So that's going to be really special. I'm really, really looking forward to that. I don't think there's gonna be a Thanksgiving 3, but never say never. But
Yeah.
we'll see. I just want to be in Thanksgiving 2, is like in a flashback.
Yeah, there you go. But that's what Alex said. He said they see do a flashback, and they can bring Kathleen back and show more of how the whole Black Friday thing, it was her fault, right? That's
Yeah,
that's
I'm gonna text Eli right now and say, put me in Thanksgiving 2, damn it.
there you go.
Preferably as a honeymoon flashback when Rick is crying about Kathleen, a honeymoon in like Fiji or something. I
Yes,
think
there you go.
that's what I want. I'm gonna suggest that.
That's a good, yeah, that's a good idea. Aside from that, aside from a Kathleen cameo or flashback, what, just as a fan of all of this now, and just as a audience member, what would you like to see in the sequel?
I have no idea. I've never thought about I don't even know. I have no idea where it's gonna go. Like, I really don't know. I'm just
Hmm.
gonna let myself be pleasantly surprised when it comes, because I'm gonna be the first in the theater to watch it 100%. So I don't know. I'm gonna try to get some info out of Eli at the next conventions. I think we're seeing him in a few months, but I'm gonna try to sneak some info, but I can't share it. So
Yeah.
Sorry.
For your for your off the record info, your fan info. Yeah, absolutely. Um, well, we're going to be here for it no matter what he does with it, and I'm sure it's going to be amazing and more mind blowing kill scenes and just craziness. Um, what are some other upcoming projects, if there are some that you can tell us about that we can look forward to seeing you in and that you'd like to talk about?
So last fall did a really funny indie kind of smaller movie called Race Walkers. It's hilarious. I really love comedy. That's kind of like my first love. And so that was really, really fun to do. A lot of improv in that one. So it's a really funny script. It's one of those scripts where I was like laughing out loud reading it. So that's, I don't know when that's coming out soon. And then yeah, I've got a bunch of cons lined up. So lots of stuff going on in 2025 for that. I've got a couple in January. And Alex and I are going to be in Albuquerque in mid-January, and then California at the end of the month, at end of January. But we are taking a day before. If it works out with our schedules, we're planning to go to Roswell. Him and I, we're
Nice.
going to try to find some aliens for you guys.
Very
So
cool.
we're going to go a day before, and we're going to go check out Roswell, because that's always like, I just watched this thing on Netflix, this alien documentary called Alien Investigation. So we're both super into that. So we're going to go check that out and then have probably some cool stories to tell at the convention. So
Oh,
come on.
awesome. I definitely will. Absolutely. And yeah, I'm sure we're going to be seeing y'all at other conventions coming up. And that does sound like a lot of fun. And there was another movie I saw called Vicious. Is that one that you can talk about?
Yeah, so Vicious, this is interesting. So I helped film that. So that was with Dakota Fanning. It's Brian Bertino movie. So that was interesting. So I had auditioned for her sister,
Okay.
and the movie, like that, just had a couple scenes, because the whole movie she's pretty much by herself.
Ah,
A lot about like this is like, the house is like possessed, whatever. So I
right.
can't about it, but it's like it's like very Dakota. It's all about Dakota. She's incredible in this. So when I didn't get the part, they needed someone who looked a little bit more like her. They offered me, because she's on the phone a lot. A lot of the movie, she's talking to the person on the phone, whether it's, her
Yeah.
mom, geez, whatever. And so they offered me to be the person on set they built me a little sound booth. So I would go rehearse with her and Brian for, about a half hour, so I could
Yeah.
get and we would rehearse lines. And I would go to my little sound booth and have her on the monitor on a close up and my little microphone. And I would be whispering in her ear and saying all the off camera lines and just acting very, very, very intimately with her. So that was incredible. Like I got to play all these different
Yeah.
characters. So it won't be my voice in the final cut. It's,
Right.
it's gonna, take a 7-year-old if it's a 7-year-old. But that was such as an actor, because I'm a huge fan of hers, to see this
Yeah.
amazing actress work and to be playing off of her like that. So that was a huge elevation in my
Sure.
acting experience, and it was such an honor. So that was my involvement with that, but it's gonna be a
Okay.
very
Okay, very cool. Yeah. All right. Yeah. I That one sounds very interesting as well. And yeah, I will definitely be looking for that. I'll be looking for both of those for sure. That sounds very exciting. I'm sure the rest of our audience is going to look forward to them as well. Um, and maybe we'll have you back on at some point to talk about some of these other projects. And we'll definitely see, I'm sure, like I said, out at a convention or some event at some point. I think Thanksgiving and you guys, being out there on the circuit, I guess we would say, it makes all the sense in the world, because it is one of those films now. It's totally one of those slashers. It's part of that club of the masked holiday slashers, and yeah, we're partial to Halloween, of course, but but Thanksgiving it's real close there. It's real close to us. So yeah, we love that one as well. And I'll be watching it, I'm sure, every November, like most people watching this.
cool. Amazing. I'm glad you loved it.
Absolutely. And again, I just can't thank you enough for hanging out with us today. This has been so cool, just learning more about you and getting these fun stories from set. And like I said, I'm sure we'll do it again at some point. And I'll
Thank you.
say happy Thanksgiving. We just celebrated, as the calendar, Thanksgiving was just recently, um, as we're recording this. But of course, with us, it's always Halloween. every day. So I always got to wrap up instead of saying goodbye just by wishing you a happy Halloween.
And happy Halloween to you too. Thanks for having me.